Thank you for joining us tonight. This meeting has been called to order without any objections. We have met the qualifications of a quorum. Tonight is November 20th, 2025. Thank you for joining us tonight. All those online, all those here in person, thank you for joining the Police Accountability Board's hybrid meeting tonight here in Rockville. Wanted to give you some Zoom protocols. This meeting is being recorded. And so thank you for that. And we will have moments for public comment. The second thing, second action item, well, I should say the third action item is to first review and approve October 16th meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Before we take it to a vote, are there any final comments or input in reference to October 16th meeting minutes? Not heard. All those in favor, either raise your hand or say aye. We see Ron. Thank you, Ron. See other hands that are up. Any nays? The ayes have it. October 16th meeting minutes has been approved. The other action item 3A is to approve tonight's agenda, November 20th. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve November 20th agenda meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Before we take it to a vote, any final comments or words on tonight's agenda? None heard or seen. Tonight's agenda, November 20th, has been approved. Action item. We're moving pretty long, quick here. Action item number 4. Is entitled, most of you may not have the action plan before you. But if you do, it's into action item 4 is board requests. So the floor is open to any board member at this point in time for any specific requests. I'm believing these requests would be something that's directed toward our administrative staff. I believe is what we're asking.
Yes, if there's anything that's currently within our ability to provide, or if it requires an expenditure of new resources, something that the board decides to approve.
Copy that. So we'll open the floor. Alicia, thank you we're glad you're able to come back in. If you can hear me, the agenda for tonight was just approved. And where we are now in the meeting agenda tonight is the board requests. So anything that any ad hoc or representative of the ad hoc has for the administrative staff, we want to put those requests out now at this point in time in the agenda.
There are one thing I would point to confirm perhaps is I know that our staff has reached out on the matter of I don't have the agenda right in front of me, so please correct me here, but on the matter of the trial board structure, I think Chris and Ron are on that ad hoc meeting. Just wanted to know if they can provide an update on that and anything they might need to ensure that we have what we need as a board to present that information on the trial board.
Over there, Ron, Chris,
Yeah, let me see if I get my camera on.
should we prepare?
There we go. Well, neither of us have met as of yet. And it's good to get some clarification on what we need to do. So, Chris, if you don't mind, reach out to me and I can reach out to you as well. And then I thought we would need some clarification from staff as to what this actually entails. You know, I do remember it coming up at the meeting, but there were no, at least I didn't get any clear details of what the task would involve. So is that something we can do now? Is it something we need to talk to staff about after the meeting?
Well, let's ask this, Chris, what was your understanding? I'm sure you had maybe in reference to the structuring of what you all were tasked with.
Yeah, I thought, to my understanding, the concern was there are concerns with the transparency and publicity of the trial board process and when it happens and whether law enforcement agencies have to post notice about when they're holding trial boards. So putting together recommendations about that, but I could be mistaken.
No, if I'm tracking correctly, and I think that's exactly what the task was, and I see Vice shaking his head as well. So that was the key point. So now, if there's something you can think of even now, just to kind of, while we have the staff here and they're open to requests. You know, now is a time to put it toward them now. And then you can, probably bring Ron in up on it later after you put in the request tonight. So based on that knowledge, because you are correct. Is there anything you can think of, or do you want to follow up?
Yeah, and sorry for the delay on getting on this. I think if the staff does have a summary of how the law enforcement agencies currently, whether if they have any current policies or practices for publishing that kind of information, that'd be helpful to just get a rundown of the state of play.
Copy that. And we agree with the little one, Chris. We hear in the background, so we agree. Okay, so that request has been noted by the staff. And if you can, you and Ron, whether it's CC or however you do it, just follow it up with this request with a followed up email, as per, the request tonight. So that way everything can be on top and they can respond with any follow-up questions. But till then, I do see Director.
I think the only addition would be if the members have time to respond to Laura's email or scheduling. I think most of the board have voted on some of the core matters. A few of the details need to be ironed out and brought back to the board. So sooner we can sit down and chat about that, sooner we can have something back ready for the board.
Cover that. Yes, Member Hudson, please. I see your hand. Let's see. Hold on, Alicia. Let's try to see if we can get your audio.
Can you hear me?
There you are. There you are.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I had to dial in on my phone. I'm on screen, but I had to dial in on my phone. I wonder if we could get a definitive response from admin regarding what our annual report is going to contain, because I think that the work that they presented us with is excellent. But I remember asking if we were going to have that shared with the public in our annual report. And I'm speaking specifically to the policy viewer, the case viewer, all of the data attendant with that. Sorry for the echo. So I don't know, that might be more of a George answer or.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I think obviously oh, sorry, there's a little bit of an echo, Alicia. I don't know if you can mute, that might be
Feedback.
helpful. You, how's this? Is this good? Okay,
Yeah,
looks
it's
like it.
better.
So yeah, it's a good question, Alicia. I think that so the next agenda item, or one coming up shortly, will be more on the data analysis sort of ad hoc that I'm leading. The issue of sharing all of the data, or what kind of data, I think is an issue that the entire board will need to assess. As it relates to the report, yeah, the report will have, the data and the graphics that we've discussed before, and some of what you will see tonight. But I think, before the report is published, we as a board will need to come together to approve of it and in its entirety. And I think the extent to which we want to include raw data in there, so long, of course, as it is not including any personally identifiable information or any confidential information, I think that that's something that we can definitely undertake before, publishing the report. Is that helpful, Alicia?
Yes, and what I've looked at, if I'm looking at it correctly, the policy viewer and the case viewer and all the data I've seen, there's no personal identifiers. All of the data has been completely disaggregated. So
Let me
if I'm
say,
looking at it correctly.
let me say this, what we can do is, because that is the very next agenda that's coming up, Alicia, so it's still a great question and a great observation. But what I would like to do is, let's finish this action item with any requests. So if you even have a request to the staff, let's make those requests. Then when we move to the next item, we can pick up where you left off first, Alicia, about what you see aggregated or not aggregated in the report, giving George time to respond, and then everyone else and any other ad hoc group to make a response. So let's finish this board request first. I do see Board Member Williams.
Thank you. Point of clarification, if I may, I want to make sure if this falls under the request or if it's further down in the agenda. I wanted to know, are we no longer getting written copies or copies of the written complaints? And if we are, is it possible that those can be shared?
I think that's the request, that's a good, all right? That's it. That falls under,
Under the
Well,
request?
yeah, and then we still probably somewhere later in the agenda can have a discussion on it, but
Okay.
I think it's a good request for the staff. Whether they respond now or later is, it's something we don't wanna push anything until we have. But it's up to you how you wanna.
So there isn't a complete set of complaint information of any kind. Within what we house. The system that handles complaint intake for the board's data form and receives updates from law enforcement agencies includes a subset of complaint information. So it includes some complaints of police misconduct involving members of the public. It does not contain all of them. The complaints that were submitted through the board's complaint form, it is likely that those forms are probably something that could be pulled. Question as far as sharing goes, sharing with the board or sharing with the public?
serving on the board?
Presumably the complaint forms generated through our portal, we can find a way to make those available. The balance of those that came in as a component of like an investigative file, is included as an attachment, when cases return to the ACC. That could be requested. Or you can see if law enforcement agencies want to provide a secondary copy. But it's not something that we would be able to just pull without either the committee adding it to the release or an agency giving us an additional copy if it's a form that didn't come in through us.
Okay, so you're gonna have a chance to do a follow-up on that, Mr. Williams, in the next action item. So we still can follow up with that, but I want to at least answer the request. The floor is still open to all members in reference to a request to the admin staff right now. We have a request that was just submitted by Member Chris, Mr. Williams. Is there any other request that we want to have on the table now? Made before we move to the next action item? All right, done heard. Next action item is the committee reports. Tonight we have focused this meeting on preparing and getting up as much information that we can to the staff for the first draft of what our annual report would look like. So any ad hoc group that wants to come forth with what you've done already or submitted already, that part of the floor is open. And any follow-up questions, for instance, what was just made about reports and or aggregation or non-aggregation, what you see it. So the floor is open now, and before we do, because I promised Member Hudson, we would start with her in this portion of the committee report, and then anyone else from there would probably then go to Member McCray, and then anyone else. Member Hudson, please. You were saying earlier.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. I was really just referring to, I've looked over the case viewer and the policy viewer and the data with that incorporated through those the very extensive data report. Thank you very much, Forrest, for that. I wondered, because if it is shared with the public, it will be very informative. Even as to how things have progressed since the inception of the board. And in my opinion, very positive findings are in that data. But again, and it is very clear. In my opinion, it's very comprehensive and very clear, and it responds to many questions that have recurringly come up from members of the public. So that was my only comment. But again, thank you, Forrest and admin. And so that was my only question, was how and whether we were going to proceed with the sharing of that data with the public. And then George did state that we needed to, I guess, as a board, meet and be in concurrence on that. Although there is no, from what I've seen, unless I'm not reading it correctly, there are no personal identifiers, and the data is completely disaggregated. And it is a very generic display of the data regarding complaints and the resolution of those complaints. So.
So for the materials that are currently available in the viewer, it's a mixed question. There is as to any analytical products put together that the board wishes to publish, and Vice Chair will be talking about those soon. The board can choose to include those in their reports. The core data itself for so case, allegation, and discipline view would become duplicative insofar as there had been a vote as of, let's see, I believe September 25th within the Administrative Charging Committee to take the unanalyzed data set, anonymized, and to make that publicly available. We just have to actually get around the other labor constraints in our time right now, including the budget process and this annual report. I think the publication of the data set is likely in early 2026. Unless we get lucky, to make sure that we are complying with all the rules for accessibility and for how data is released and presented through governmental body for the county. But it is something to look forward to, that data set on cases, allegations, and disciplinary recommendations without any information about the individuals involved will be or has been voted to be made available, which has the very helpful side effect for the board in the intervening time that everything that you derive from that data is also presumably anything that you want to do with it, any way that you want to publish it.
I have a follow-up, but I won't go before member Craig, please.
Oh, I just want to report that I, with Alicia's assistance Ron, we did send out a report for the hiring committee and listening tour group that has been filed both with chair, vice chair, and Forrest Gill and Raleigh. The thought process is we have another listening event happening in December on the 2nd. That would take an amended report and add that to the report at that time. Any other comments from my team members? If that's the case, that's all I have.
Okay. Follow up in reference to following up on member Hudson's thought in reference to how much I think we're disclosing in the annual report. I believe as much as will allow us within the parameters of what we're allowed to share, as long as it doesn't move us into confidentiality issues with mentioning, specific citizens and or police officers. I think, in this case, with this annual report, the more the better, as opposed to the opposite. Especially when we're focusing this report on outcomes. And I'm going to, if there's no other hands before we give it to Vice Chair. If we're focusing on outcomes, then I think it is wise for the board, even to make a motion or vote about, what we're actually putting in this report. Because I really feel strong about the more the better. And if it's something, I think, Member Hudson mentioned this, making it easy for the public to follow. When they see this report, they can actually break this down, see where we concluded this, how we concluded into our outcome based on these actions, these trends and or even disciplinary actions of the agency. Making it that easy and that legible is very important with this report. And again, I know I'm saying her name a lot, but she made a bunch of good, strong points, Member Hudson. Because this year's report will really show the progression of the PAB, how far we've come since we've been here. And I think it's important to put what we can in there and following it up with, based on these trends, based on these disciplinary outcomes, what our recommendations are to the executive branch. You know, I have a few that I think would be good in report is, requesting that the executive branch, I don't know what terminology we would use, but the executive branch, seeking to clarify the certain part of the legislation as far as what it reads on the PAB's mandate. And that takes us back to the August 22nd, September 15th, October 16th issue. That's a clarification that, we could even put in as a recommendation in our report. This needs to be clarified, and that's on the county council executive side more than it is the PAC, but I think that's a public view that needs to be heard and seen as well. If there's any other ad hoc group member that wants to say anything in reference to what they were working on before we give it to the vice chair, because he has an extensive report and we don't want to take away from his time that he would need. I don't see anything, so Vice Chair Blueberry.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try not to make it too extensive, but I will say that as we get started, and I'll request the help of the staff here to maybe if you can share the screen on the report itself, on the preliminary report. Thank you. Yeah, the transparency is important. It's in, our own slogan here for the PAB. So I would agree wholeheartedly that any and all information that we can release should be released. The question will be a matter of practicality. Like Forrest said, some of it will be duplicative, but also, what is the best way to host this data, whether that's through a portal, like the technical aspect of sharing that data. But as a whole, on the value of sharing the data, we can agree. Let me see if I can take a step here to switch screens. It seemed to okay, here we go. So, all right. So these are going to be a few of the data points. We'll say the graphs, the visuals that you see are coming from data, multiple sources of data, right? Multiple sort of timelines and data points to come up with this visual. And as you see at the top, this is a draft also, worth pointing out that we are essentially providing a preview of some of the information that the PAB's annual report for this year will contain. As it relates to data, these are the total cases, respondents, and officers charged by department. You see that color coded on the legend on the right as well. And a little bit of a time series here of what we've seen over the course of the establishment of the PAB across every law enforcement agency, with some exceptions, like I think the Maryland National Capital Police, right? That's excluded here, given the jurisdiction of the ACC, the state ACC on that. But essentially, this is some preliminary information that shows the number of cases across LEAs. You can see obviously here, MCPD stands out in terms of how many cases they have had adjudicated. Of course, we also can point out to the fact that MCPD is the largest agency across the county, and in terms of coverage, it makes sense that the data looks like this. This is just a little bit of of the context that we're starting to dig into. The next step for us will be to look into how this data relates to the size of the size of the agencies themselves in terms of sworn officers or authorized officers. Forrest, in the spirit of clarity of information, make sure that if there's anything that I'm misinterpreting, that you can let me know, let us know. But essentially, what I'm trying to say here is that this first picture is a high level overview of what is going on, what has gone on in the county as it relates to cases across law enforcement agencies. Our next step will be to dig into this to better understand, based on the number of officers available to each law enforcement agencies, what does the picture look like then? Call it a little bit of a proportional comparison here on across the law enforcement agencies. Forrest, if you don't mind moving ahead. If you as we do have this conversation, I will definitely take questions. If you chair, if you point them out to me, it's a little difficult for me to see who might have his or her hand up. Here we're looking at allegations considered by the ACC by category of or grouping. This is also across agencies. So I'm trying to zoom in myself here. You'll see, for example, just to provide some explanation here in 2024, most of the allegations submitted here for the ACC's consideration involve conformance to law, general and professional conduct. 2025, we have conformance to law, specific duty violations, etc. And these are also stacked bars representing, the extent to which these allegations were found unfounded, ineligible, where there were exonerations or charges. And again, this is a little bit of a picture of what is the look of the county as it relates to not only the complaints themselves, which you see here, but the allegations as well broken out. Good so far?
So far, so good, absolutely.
Okay. And I'll keep going. Thank you, Forrest. So again, a deeper dive into some of those examples that I just provided. So, I said in 2024, we had a lot of allegations that we can see on the category conformance to law. Conformance to law, it's worth pointing out, is almost an umbrella category, a sort of catch-all for a few different things across agencies. Some of the things that might be involved at a more descriptive level could fall into unsatisfactory performance, searches and seizures, like improper searches and seizures, or being absent without leave, just as an example. So you'll see here 2023, 2024 data, what that has looked like. For 2025, this is going up to Q3, but there's definitely a significant change there for conformance to law. These I think, are also cases that have not necessarily been resolved yet or are in the ACC's docket. So there's more data again that will be coming in. But just to step back for a second again, when we looked at thank you, Forrest. When we looked at the landscape of allegations across time, on the next slide, we're focusing on what conformance to law specifically looked like. And if you can keep going, Forrest, on the next one. General and professional conduct. This is again a little bit of a snapshot of how those decisions panned out under these allegations specifically. And for general and professional conduct, these are things that involved conduct unbecoming, rudeness or discourteous behavior, and insubordination, just as some examples of what are in these categories. You can keep going, Forrest.
Why is moving forward, if this question can wait, but just for the sake of the listening public. The chart showing 2025 is the reason why is because this 2025 information is the end of the third quarter. Is why, and we're expecting more to come in for 2025, or?
So this chart is by complaint year. So this isn't taking into account that, so there are decisions, for example, in the 2024 column that have been made in 2025, but the complaints were in 2024. The idea being to give a picture of what types of things were being complained of at the time. rather than focusing on necessarily when the decision was reached on those specific allegations.
Okay, can I
Please.
just, so that I understand. So in other words, if there was an activity that happened in 2024, but the complaint came through in 2025, we're applying it to 2024, is that my understanding?
No, so there's, within the data set that the board has, and it's good, reviewing it in the staff report, there are a few different ways to calculate things. There's the decision year, so the ACC actually publishes.
Okay,
There's the complaint year,
okay,
in which the person submits their complaint, either to the
Okay.
PAB, the law enforcement agency, and then there's the incident, which is the year in which the actual event takes place.
okay,
So this is based on complaint, the year in which the person submitted their complaint.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, and I
Lewis.
think, oh, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I'm saying thank you for your patience. The floor is yours.
Understood. We do have that, it was the last chart for us, that the larger view where it was by decision year. Right. So here, I think to Chuck's point, this is a little bit of a better view as it relates to when the ACC's decision came through. So if you just focus on 2025, you compare conformance to law 2025 and 2024, you see a little bit of a decrease in 2025. I would just again point out that this is up to Q3 of 2025. Okay. And so yeah, this one again here, just another example of some of the ones that we've seen from the larger landscape view. Communications and technology involve things such as violation of social media policy, departmental technology misuse, body worn camera violations, or other audio video recording sort of violations as well. So this is what that category entails. And again, a little bit of a view here of what those cases, those allegations, how those distributed from ACC decisions over the course of the last couple of years. For bias and discrimination, I think, again, you can see here, most of these were exonerations. For example, 2023, we had more unfounded cases. 2024, definitely a lot more exonerations. And you know, these involve discrimination, harassment allegations, or allegations of bias and profiling. Okay, and then last but not least, again, these are some example categories that we're selecting to dive deeper into for this specific presentation. You know, the annual report will also have this information and more. But lastly, as an example for use of force, you see here the distribution of allegations outcomes from the ACC in this stacked bar. So for the category of use of force. Okay.
thank you. George, did you say
Yes.
that this one's outcomes as opposed to complaint year?
These are outcomes by complaint year. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Forrest.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So this is the number of ACC cases by year and by department, and this is a distribution of the ethnicity of those complainants. So this is something that is relatively new as well, but again, in an effort to provide more information, not less. This is again a distribution of how what the ethnicity of complainants is across ACC cases. So we have also some of that information. You'll see that there's, and Forrest could probably speak to this a little better than I can. There are specific, answer choices here: prefer not to say and no response, or blank responses. These are captured here separately, but you can see also the information for the other ethnicity data that we have here.
Right, so for all the demographic charts and the data set that the board currently has, We are using the categories that exist within the board's forms. So currently the options for someone declaring their ethnicity are prefer not to say, not Hispanic or not Latino, or Hispanic or Latino. The fourth option there is not something you can select per se. It just says no response. That means the entry is received as blank. There can be multiple reasons for that. One, the fields have been adjusted to make sure that if someone chooses, they don't even necessarily have to say prefer not to say, they can just leave it blank. If they're more comfortable with that, and we want to make sure that we capture exactly how they chose to express themselves. The second version being that complaints that are obtained through a manner other than a form, for the people who call into a department or email a department to start a complaint process through direct narrative, there's not a demographic collection process for that. The investigators for those complaints are not going to then ask this person, what is your race, what is your ethnicity, what is your gender, as part of the complaint intake or investigation. So those would also be received potentially as blank or as not applicable. The data goes through a filter to match it to board's existing categories or to a null response. The board could choose to consider for prefer not to say a null response if there's a different way that you want to express that. In either case, there is no affirmative data for that person's demographic category.
Understood.
Okay, question, forgive me for asking so many questions, I want to
No,
make sure
that's what
I
this is about.
understand this. So basically, you're saying that whoever's doing intake will not ask some of those questions such as race, et cetera, and it's just a matter of saying either no data or prefer not to say or something to that effect?
Correct. The notice and information that we received and then input into the system as part of the ACC's case management. It's not going to include that. It's not something that's going to be asked during the investigation. It's something that people may declare on a form that they submit. But departments are not in the habit of directly asking people their race, ethnicity, gender, region of origin, place of birth as part of investigating that person's complaint.
Okay, these are departments, the LEAs we're talking.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's in reference to the actual investigation. So, right, so if someone in the IA, General Affairs, is investigating this specific complaint, they're not obligated or mandated, or whatever the term would be,
And
to ask.
And it would be an unusual question to ask in any investigation.
That's just in the investigation, not in the intake of the complaint. If I'm tracking right, in the intake of the complaint, the question is there.
So if the person doesn't fill out a form, then there just wouldn't be data.
Okay.
It's not something that's re-asked or requested at any point later.
yeah. So just to jump in real quick.
Wait, sure.
Yeah, just quickly, I think it's a good point. What Chuck is, what the question that he's bringing up. Essentially, what is going on here is obviously we don't have perfect data across LEAs and the PAB. If you remember, and I know Chuck and Greg and I worked on this together. The complaint form recommendation that the PAB has issued of trying to standardize those forms. That's another avenue, another sort of resource that we could use to try to make sure that the data comes more uniformly. But to Forrest's point, someone that walks into a police station to issue a complaint may not necessarily provide all of the information or even fill out a form necessarily in the way that we would be able to get all of this data. So there's just multiple points of friction in terms of the collection of all this data, not just because of the nature of the data, but also because of differences across law enforcement agencies, and even the PAB and how we collect that information.
It's worth noting that the MPAA and the county's implementing statute are silent on demographic information. It's not something that's part of a mandatory complaint. It's not part of a minimum or a target variable. It differs somewhat from, say, like the Maryland Sentencing Commission, which performs some similar work to police accountability boards in its review of sentences. But they're working with a data set that has required at several other layers, agencies to have obtained that information. For example, in criminal justice databases, demographics of defendants. But that is, the statute, it remains silent on that for the MPAA.
All right. All right. Mr. Lucas, please.
Okay. And I'll say too, this is a similar view as it relates to the sex or gender of complainants. And one point to make here is that the visualization, this is a draft, as you can see, again, just want to restate the fact that the visualization of the sort of the way in which this data is displayed may change. So bear with us as we go through that process of building out the report. But again, this is just an example of what other information we will be able to provide as it relates to cases received. And yeah, lastly, as it relates to the race of complainants as well. So again, I think, Forrest, is that the last of what we have to display?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Again, just a preview and a preliminary one of the data that we have available and are working through, visualizing with the help of Forrest and Laura as well, to insert into the annual report, make analysis of all of those cases and all of that data. And to Alicia's point at the outset, I think at that point, we would be able to come back to the board for us to decide as a group, what data we will be able to release and in sort of what fashion. So a lot to work through here. There's definitely a lot of data. Some of the data just in terms of, recognizing the effort that Forrest and Laura have put into this, we're still talking about, Excel files that have 8, 10, and 12,000 rows to them, that the staff has diligently and with a lot of detail tried to work through to provide this for us as well. So when the time comes, it will be necessary that all of us get our eyes on this and our thoughts, so that this can be a solid report going out to the community.
Thank
Any
you.
questions? Yeah.
I don't think I have a question, but I would like to follow your point that the board, and we're clarifying what, good to see, member Kellner tonight. Once we clarify specifically our deadline to getting this report out, I think the board should consider, as we had on the table in our earlier meetings, of having the freedom to request an additional meeting through the time that we have left. And making that request known now will give the admin staff time to make sure that budgetary constraints aren't an issue and time availability aren't an issue. So I think we need to strongly consider that. And with this report, the reason why we probably would strongly consider adding another meeting time on that for the month. It could be all virtual and enough time for the public to know about it. Once approved. Because I see that there are going to be a lot of recommendations, policies, recommendations to policies from this report. I mean, just a bunch were just glaring at me, just following vice chair's report. And the team that worked with her, and ed staff, because we can see a lot of issues with whether it's the use of technology, body cam, and conformance to law, writing some recommendations of what changes or policies we can recommend to these seemingly, high outcomes. Where there were, administratively charged, outcomes. And even really on what was exonerated. So there's a lot. So I wanna maybe put that table that for a second before we make a motion on it. We finish tonight. But I think we probably should end tonight on whether or not we can agree on an added meeting. Because once we get because we're turning it over to the staff and after this for their report. And maybe they can mention what the next meeting is before Christmas. And when the actual deadline to actually have everything edited and completed. For rollout for the annual report, we can base that next meeting off of that, so we can decide how much of this. And how much of recommendations we see within this report. Are there any questions? Because mine was the question, so. Are there any follow-up questions to what was just presented?
Just a comment, great job on what was put together so far, just wanted to commend you on.
No, thank you.
Outstanding job.
Hopefully so.
Outstanding. We do have Member Kellner quickly. Member Kellner, what you just heard was, of course, some of the report and all, and we're working on finalizing, getting as much as we can in our annual report this year. Some ad hoc group members spoke and what they've already submitted. And there was a request that came out, are there any requests that you have for the staff and part of what you're working on, and or are there any statements that you want to share with what you've been working on as an ad hoc leader?
None to add at this time. I mean, I assume there'll be a record of the letters we have transmitted this year that will be included in the report.
I think that's the board's decision, and I think we, as we said earlier, Member Keller, that we agreed that we should put as much as we can in this report, as long as we do not, infringe on any.
HR, PII.
Right, thank you. Infringe on any confidentiality information. So as long as we don't infringe on that, I think more is better as opposed to less. And we got a thumbs up from Member Hudson, so we're okay. We got a thumbs up from her. She didn't. So we're on the right track. Absolutely. So yes. If there, I don't want to miss any other members' comment or anything. If not. Okay, I don't see any hands. And Vice Chair, you've concluded, want to make sure we didn't cut you off. Got a thumbs up there. We will move to the next action item, which is our staff report.
Let's start with the monthly complaint report.
Yes, this is the monthly complaint report for October 2025. We received 2 complaints through the portal. They both were for Montgomery County Department of Police. One is currently under investigation, and one is ineligible. We received 5 complaints through other methods. One was defined as eligible by the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office and is currently under investigation. 4 were received by the Montgomery County Department of Police and are eligible and under investigation. Mr. Gilman Riley?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Riley, I just want to do, because I skipped an action item. And I want to do this correctly because I don't want this to come back Honest Representative of the Meetings Act. I did skip an action item, which is action item 6, which is the chair report. Skip that item. If our dual hat wearer, vice chair and parliamentarian, is I would like to motion that I table the chair's report for this session, because there's no completed report to share yet. Is it appropriate to make a motion to table that action item?
I think if there's no report, then I think that is the action item.
Roger that. Then there is no report update at this time for that action item, which is the action item 6 chair report. So since we have concluded that, now in an edit attempt,
All right.
it is the staff report.
Review of action items, uploading the board's statement in response to the joint law enforcement letters and in response to the board's questions to the Tacoma Park Police Department. The board voted to upload that as a component of the minutes from that meeting. The board voted to approve those minutes earlier this evening, so those will be uploaded with the minutes. Scheduling of the listening tour ad hoc group meetings for December. The meeting has been scheduled for December 2nd, 2025 at 7 p.m. The trial board request information for the board's website. Just any further discussion with the ad hoc group on the details of how that will operate before that proposal can be brought back to the board to formalize for publication. The request from the ad hoc group on data analysis trends to, as an update, the ratio of ACC cases to the number of sworn officers for each law enforcement agency and up-to-date numbers for each law enforcement agency. That is completed as of November 13th. An update to reduce categories to reflect which were used in the committee's actual review of cases. That has been completed. We'll address that more in a moment in describing or in reminding the board of the data update that it received. The PAB appointed one incumbent member and one new member to the Administrative Charging Committee. Both of those individuals accepted and have begun their work. The committee is very glad to be back to full strength, as I'm sure Chair Walker can attest. The certificate of appreciation for Catherine Manning was sent October 28th, 2025. For training reminders, that monthly security training, just a reminder to complete it. You especially don't want to miss more than 2, otherwise Ted's may lock your account and then we won't be able to assist you. Second, the members of the board are required to complete training from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. That's on an annual basis, and you'll receive information on how to register for that training. Regarding the annual report, we've received materials from the ad hoc group on hiring and training and the listening to our ad hoc group as a joint document. And it's my understanding, I think this has been probably confirmed that ad hoc group has ratified those materials, so those can be made available to the board at this point. Is that correct, Ms. Hudson?
I'm sorry, say again for us.
The I'm trying to remember for the materials that were submitted to the ad hoc group on hiring and training and the listening to our ad hoc group, that report segment has been ratified. So other than the updates that are pending, of course, for the upcoming listening tour, that's ready for distribution to the board at large.
Yes, yes.
Great.
I have one question. You made a comment, I'm gonna catch it, about an annual training.
Yes.
Could you expound, please, because I don't remember.
So we've advised that for the type of employee classification, quasi-employee classification that board members hold, just like all other Montgomery County employees, are required to complete training from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. It's an online self-guided course. I deal
Is there, has there been an email that came out to that effect yet?
no, we'll be sending you details shortly.
Thank you, okay.
Of course. For the annual report, ratification of the final report is currently scheduled for December 18th, 2025. After that date, we would not be in a position to guarantee much in the way of availability for continued work on that report. So it's strongly recommended to have it completed by then, at least other than formatting. The final item there is actually, I mistakenly indented, it's separate from the annual report. Budget update regarding special counsel. So the funds currently available for special counsel are being divided into two tranches, for the ACC and the PAB to help better track usage, and to make sure both bodies can actually use it more flexibly. The portions that have been set aside are based on prior and projected usage. So currently, the ACC is allotted $110,000. The Police Accountability Board is allotted $40,000. And each body will be receiving updates once a month on the overall program spend for that line item. So in Q1 of fiscal year 26, the ACC expended $19,168.75. The Assistance of Special Counsel, the Police Accountability Board during the same period expended $6,637.50. In October, the committee expended $6,325, and in October, the Police Accountability Board expended $5,548.50. So the net for FY26 for the committee is $25,493.75. And the net for the board is $12,186. So the net for the program to date is $278,335.50.
Thank you.
That remains as of this year against a $150,000 budget. Reduced by $100,000 from our prior allotment. In fiscal year 24, the program is allotted $50,000, which was exceeded by a total of $89,324.25. It is a good time to start thinking, if you have not already, about whether you wish to make any recommendations that would relate to the funding of the program, that you want to pitch directly to council or to the executive. The staff's own recommendations for budgeting the program at this stage are our internal county executive's office. Ultimately, we're required to ratify and follow the county executive's recommended budget. So we are we're not able to say anything at this point about anything that we recommended. But for example, if you see a place for additional personnel, or if you see a need for greater levels of funding for special counsel, for printing, for any type of resource, the sooner that you can have some sort of a plan or direction, if that's something you wish to pursue, the easier it is to try and submit it to council.
So the question just on that, and this is for the board, entire board's input and thought as well. So if we do have an idea on some budget request or recommendation, that's separate from the annual report. This is something that's coming straight from the board to the admin staff to present on our behalf to the executive.
It's it can be a mix of all these things. So it would be obviously, the board issued its statement on its mandate, and I think this is contemplated by it, but I think it would certainly be the view of the executive departments that it's entirely reasonable for you all to make policy recommendations that relate to the operation and funding of MPAA systems. Likewise, so that, which is of course included in your annual report if you chose to, or about how a particular item could have helped you in the annual report. And then you could raise that again, or if you chose to raise it for the first time directly with the council, we would be able to intake that, anything that you write, and of course package it and prepare it for the council to make sure that it's something that gets to them. Any particular argument that you may want to present at a hearing, it would be prudent to have a board member present for. Likewise, anything that we can do to, or we're able to help you flesh out requests. So if you're, for example, in a type of personnel request, if there's a type of role that you're looking for someone to fill, we can help translate that into what type of employee category is that in the county, what sort of person and what kind of funding would that require approximately to help ease that request along.
Yeah, I thought that one thing for sure had always, I thought then in our purview as a PAB is some type of additional staff thing in reference in way of the research category, those who we conduct more research responsibility on. And I'm thinking also now based on the shared budget report, there seems to be a underuse even in the way of special counsel for the PAB. So I'm wondering to the board out loud, in reference to relationship and getting something done, is it prudent to make this directly to the council and the executive? As opposed, or is it both putting it in our report as a part of, structuring it where we're saying, we could have accomplished something a little better if we had this, and so we're recommending that in the annual report. And simultaneously, can we put it to the council and executive at the same time? But I think in my mind, and this is my thought out loud, I believe it's best, if we can put it in both avenues, why not? Because we can make an explanation of it and why, and they can see where we derived that why, and directly to them to them meaning the council and executive, this is why we think we need this budget raised back up to this point to help us for 2026. Any thought or follow up on that?
Yeah. I concur with mostly what you said. I just had one question. Mr. Goldman Riley, you were saying, help me understand if I'm getting this correct. I do understand the dynamics that you are considered part of the county executive's office. But if there is something that in the process of doing your duties, you feel that we can be more effective if only we had X, let me make sure I'm asking this correctly. Would it be in your best interest if you were able to communicate that to the board, and then communicate it to the county executive? Or are you saying that you would go directly to the county executive to say?
So we follow the same budget process as the other departments and
Sure.
non-departmental accounts. This program is funded through a non-departmental account. Those specific recommendations go straight through OMB, and through the executive. Now, as an entirely separate track of, without getting into whether something was or wasn't recommended, I can and generally have to the chairs of each public body made recommendations of, this may be something that would be helpful if you wish to pursue it. I believe, say the committee are towards the end of FY25, submitted a letter to the council arguing for maintenance of the existing special counsel budget. And I believe both programs or both bodies in answering questions for the county council had indicated a desire for additional staffing based on discussions with staff of ways that things could be expanded. So it is something that we, if there are ways that we think that could be useful or we believe that would be best served in particular for the committee or the board to weigh in on, and funding is often one of those, since probably more than ever, budget is tight. And at the same time, be hard pressed to find department directors who are asking to, lower their budgets. So having other stakeholders say that the money would be helpful definitely can't hurt. If that answers your question.
Yeah, so that goes to, Mr. Chairman, your question of, do we go to the council and the county executive? I'm trying to, how do we finesse this? Since you consider part of the county executive's office, if we went to the council, the county executive sort of get a little under collar about that.
I think not at all. So we can, since the council holds the power of the purse, it's always expected that a recommendation for funding will be sent to them. Most recommendations at the board's request that have been submitted so far, and for the committee's request for special counsel to maintain special counsel funding, we're also copied to Dr. Stoddard, overseeing public safety and overseeing this NDA. So it can be dual channel. We can also do things like help set up meetings between leadership of these public bodies, and we try and get you in front of the executive himself to help make that case. Obviously, some folks at the top of the county executive's office get very busy, so it might take a bit of time, but I know it's something that we can arrange if there's a plan that either body wants to pursue.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I
Thank you.
thank you, because that's what I was thinking, the finessing, but I knew the council held the power of the purse. I know we wanted to get something up before them. I was just wondering, was it feasible and advantageous to have it and both have it in your report and directly?
So I think there's an argument to be made that when something is referenced in your annual report, you're helping to make a record of it. And then with budgets getting voted on and discussed more thoroughly in committees and by the council in the early part of 2026, well after your report has been published, it gives you something to refer back to.
Right.
That is already public record and a public note.
Okay. So if the board, I guess, I would like to see them both, the annual report and structure something with that budget request or increase. If I would like for maybe the three of us, and I'm saying the three of us with a question. Member Kellner, Cause I think ad hoc we can do forward. So, the McKellar, Vice Chair,
Sorry, I believe Mr. Rosani was with us tonight, and so he may or may not be able to, but I believe he had expressed an interest in being assigned to an ad hoc group and participating more.
yeah, let's get in, yeah. Can we, let's do that. Because Vice Chair has a lot heavy lifting right now with this report. So we want to keep him focused on that. So Member Hudson, Member Kellner, myself, and Member Richard. And I'm sorry, which is last name again? Roseanne. I think we four, if you two or three, he's not here yet, but we'll get the email out to him, the staff, if we would. If we could kind of form our ad hoc group in reference to quickly putting something together. To go before the council holding it first. As far as the budget and what we see and how it would be as well presented in the annual report, so we can have it in record for when they start in early 2026. You know, their budget redo. Is that, would you two? Yes, thumbs up, all right, outstanding, so we can, I'll send up a follow-up text on when we can follow up that. If there's no questions, I would like to ask right at this point, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, cut you off. Please.
I believe there's only one other item in staff report.
Please.
Sort of to draw the committee's attention back to an email from earlier this week. That helps further explain item 7B4 of updates to the data available. You all received links to a new version of the viewer in the policy viewer. The old versions are still available to click through. They're not going to receive any further updates or maintenance. But the new versions do hold all of the same net data. But in a more usable format and with a much tighter back end. But the new information that's available to you through Q3 of 2025 includes the ACC outcome summary, so a total number of allegations across agencies and their outcomes for the lifetime of the program. You have the case view showing the summary of each case in which the ACC has issued an opinion, including case number, year and quarter the decision was issued, year in which the incident occurred, year in which the complaint was submitted, those being new data items, the law enforcement agency, case metrics, the number of respondents ultimately charged, the number of allegations, and within allegations, the number resulting in an administrative charge, the number exonerated, unfounded, or deemed ineligible. Time metrics for each case, the number of days from the alleged incident to the date of the opinion, the number of days between the complaint to the date on which the ACC issued its opinion, the number of days from the complaint to the date from which the LEA submitted its investigation to the ACC, that being investigative length of the case, and the number of days from the ACC received the investigation to the date on which it issued its opinion, so the length of the time that the ACC had to review the case. You also now, as noted before, have new information for each case relating to demographics, complainant gender, race, and ethnicity. Within allegation view, you again have the case number, year information about the year or decision, incident, and complaint timeframes, the LEA, an anonymized respondent number. This specifically identifies an officer within the context of a complaint, but does not relate to, does not connect to any other complaints. So respondent 1 is just the first respondent for that case. It's not that respondent 1 has been charged with a truly prolific number of offenses. You also have the count number for each offense. So you'll have respondent 1, count 1 at a minimum, and potentially more. The outcome of each allegation, and as within each allegation, the alleged policy violations, including links to the rule source documents, as well as the line citation of what portion of that source material is being used in the charge. The violation category and level, if the person was charged with violating that offense, and perf category information. You have 3 levels. You have a highly specific and ultimately not super analytically helpful category. You have the principal analytical category, and then you have super categories. So it's just a hierarchical relationship between those things. If you pop it open, you can see they're pretty consistent in that respect. And again, you have demographics associated with each of these as it flows through from the case data. In your disciplinary review, you have a summary of the disciplinary recommendations made by the ACC in each of its opinions, including case number, year information, decision, complaint, and incident, the LEA, again, the anonymized respondent number, the type of discipline recommended. Disciplinary recommendations with a variable quality have that noted. So loss of pay and loss of leave lasts for a specified duration, and that is noted. And whether the discipline has been accepted by the respondent officer, if that is known. That is, although that one is not something that flows through by way of the committee. That's just a piece of information that we've been able to pick up over time, either through inference or direct conference with internal affairs departments about the status of those cases. Discipline summary is just breaking down the frequency with which different types of discipline were applied. You have charts breaking down the ratio of officers to cases. So the number of sworn officers for each department that submitted cases to the committee. So bear in mind that all of this data is case-based and not complaint-based. That is, it relates to complaints that have resulted in an investigative file being submitted to the ACC. As consequently, you won't have information in there about the Maryland National Capital Park Police because they don't have ACC cases in its jurisdiction. The number of cases per sworn officer, or per 100 sworn officers, the number of respondents per 100 sworn officers, and the number of respondents per charged per 100 officers. There's a chart included there. All of the calculations for those ratios are based on the active sworn officers listed. That is distinguished against the authorized sworn, which is just at a budgetary level, how many officers the department has permission to hire. So if they're fully staffed, that's a helpful number, but more often than not, most of these departments have at least some vacancies. So we want to make it accurate to who is actually on the street. Breakdown of allegations by category. Note that the total count of allegations described by the perf categories is slightly higher than the total number of allegations. 442 instances and categories being used and 434 allegations. That's due to some allegations appropriately being described by more than one non-duplicative and analytically useful specific category. So if something is both bias and discrimination and communication technology, both of those would be noted. Then you have that same information by decision year and incident year. You have the select category charts that were shown by the vice chair earlier. A breakdown of the sworn officers per department in the way described earlier. A breakdown of outcomes by category. The outcome by category tab, along with the outcome by category gender and category race and category ethnicity. Those tabs are purely there to help generate charts. I would not try to read or print them. The category or the outcome by category race has nearly 20,000 rows. So unless you have a really big printing budget or a really nice printer, I would skip that one. But very useful for generating the accompanying charts. which are included. And that is the extent of the data update that you've received, which means that is the end of the staff report.
One question.
Please.
You mentioned, the word source. Can you elaborate on that a little? I think I clicked on that, and that gives me whatever the department's policy or code, is that
Correct.
Okay,
So that'll take you to the rule document from that the charge is generated by, and for the most part, those are indeed departmental policies. Most of the time, you would, after it opens, you would then need to scroll to what is specifically cited. So if it's function code 300, rule 1, conformance to law, probably should just need to scroll down until it gets to there. Oh, and actually, for one more update, in the policy viewer, this isn't noted in the email, this was completed subsequently. But in that first page, you have the overall, should be a familiar view, showing you who created a particular policy, the citation for that policy, a link to the source document, the perf categories associated with it. The remaining tabs are all related to the analytical perf categories. So for example, bias and discrimination. Those tabs are not just filtered views to show you what policies from the policy viewer are in that category. They have been further filtered to make them at the request of the data and trends group to make it more useful. So each tab, for the category bias and discrimination, category communications and technology, shows you charges that have been substantively used in a case for which you have an opinion. So it leaves out instances of, for example, when the board has requested copies of policies for its own, for learning and for its own policy recommendations, but that haven't been part of an opinion, it weeds those out so you can focus directly on within those windows, things that have been used in open case or in closed cases.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. Updating staff report. I don't see any hands for follow-up questions or anything. I know we are moving forward this time, but I would like to make time. I know we've been busy working on this, but we do have members of the public, especially here present. So are there any comments from the members of the public? If so, we want to open up the floor now, but I do want to remind you that we're gonna kind of be tight on time, so we're really gonna stick with that 90 seconds. So I don't see any hand raised online to get that time, but we do have a member of the public present. So we're asked, while we're waiting for anyone online to raise their hand, that member. Please, Mr. Landau.
Thank you, Chairman. On November 16th, I sent an email to you about two particular issues. One is I was hoping you would be able to tell the public what information exactly you are getting from the ACC and that you are able to review, and if there have been any changes over time in what information has been made available. So I hope that you can respond to that. But the second point that I made is that there was a trial board hearing last month, I think, at Tacoma Park. And one of the, although it was available to the public, the decision of the trial board, to my knowledge, has not been made public. And since you have a PAB representative on the trial board, and because I think it's in the public interest to understand what the results of that trial board hearing was, I'm asking that you report that information back to the public, so that we can understand what the ACC decision was and what the outcome from the trial board was.
Thank you. Thank you. I know we addressed at least one of those questions. I think the staff worked on. Gary, sure.
Yeah, so I provided some responses earlier today around 4 p.m. So the regarding any information about trial board requests, and as discussed when the board voted to move forward with discussion of having a portal for having a summary of requests that it receives to assign the trial board member. It's current, the board did not elect to, and I would say that we probably have limited staffing available to support a measure that would call for providing all outcome information, because it's not something that we readily receive. However, we did also provide a list of all the materials that the ACC currently provides on a quarterly basis, which is the same as the first 3 items listed at the end of the staff report, for the summary, the case level summary, the allegation level summary, and the discipline level summary. It is, I think it was discussed at last meeting and would be something for the ad hoc group standing by to flesh out the proposal, to consider something to the effect of surveying trial board members when they submit their invoices to be paid, to see if they're willing to provide a copy of the decision, if they have at that point, or if they're willing to follow up with it. I think it is worth remembering that the trial board members are certainly appointed by the board, but just as the members of this board are appointed by the executive, and you are not the executive's agents or representatives, the trial board doesn't. Civilian trial board members don't represent the PAB at these hearings. They represent their own independent judgment, which I will select them for. So if you were to want to create a survey or some standardized questions to submit to those folks whenever they complete a trial board hearing, that could be a way of systematizing and obtaining that information. We would just need to know what exactly you want to ask them. Is it just for a copy of the opinion, or is there any other question that you would want to ask them? And to the best of my knowledge, we wouldn't. It would be voluntary, and I don't expect we would have pushback, but we can't, for example, condition the payment of their invoices on them providing the information. We're required to pay if they sat.
Copy that. So, please go ahead.
So in that regard, because in my mind, I'm thinking out loud here. It seems to me that whatever the outcomes are from the trial board is something that would be able to be built in or factored into the recommendations that we ultimately make in our report. So it seems that whatever information comes out of the trial board, we should have, so that we can put that in our report.
And so, for example, in Prince George's County, there is a system for that. They have, they determined that they require 2 full-time positions to support that kind of work. So I can say that we wouldn't be able to support that work presently.
Understood,
Um,
but that sounds like that's something that we talked to the county executive. about.
indeed.
But
But as to including the information, using it to develop policy recommendations that would seem to be very sound. Or to, even at the statutory level, consider making recommendations. To the effect of building in new feedback loops. So as has been remarked on before, while the board is required to forward all complaints of police misconduct or conduct it receives to the appropriate agency for investigation, there is no reciprocal responsibility. And while the board is required to appoint trial board members, there's no reciprocal responsibility of any agency, whether that's the Office of Administrative Hearings or the agencies, to report back what ultimately happened. And particularly for the type of analytical work you're doing, having something that's rigid and mandated is a lot more likely to succeed than any sort of like agreed upon practice or memorandum of understandings. Those can change quite rapidly.
So again, then Ken and member Kellner and member Hudson, I saw it more in reference to the public's request through Mr. Landau. I saw it more than as a reason why we could solicit, while we are soliciting what could make us better with more funding, if we had staffing that can handle receiving information and outcomes from these trial boards. Because right now, we just don't have the ability to do that, or the funding to do that, which will help us create that greater sense of transparency and access for the public, if that's something that could if we had actually someone able to do that research, collect that information, from my understanding, because it's not something that is within policy that they have to reciprocate. But we can request, because I think it's important to have that information shared.
Yeah.
And we want to share that, but we have to be able to make sure it's something that we could follow through with. Because we have the staffing in or funding to do it. If I'm tracking that correctly, because again, what's clear is though the PAB appoints a trial board member, that trial board member does not represent the PAB.
Understood.
It's not there on behalf of the PAB. We just appoint them. That person has its anonymity, and their decision is based on whatever the other that they, I'm assuming, need to vote and conclude on, based on evidence. So we want to kind of set that tone. That's just like we were appointed by the executive. We are autonomous from the executive. So I'm just kidding, and Alicia, I think that's something we can kind of add to our purview to see how we could somehow make that, because again, that's a recommendation that would help us complete a greater, help us have greater strides in fulfilling our mandate, to the public, and which includes everybody, LEA and citizens alike. So. Yes, Ken.
Yes, this might be the right juncture to bring up that Chuck and I have just both happened to attend a pre-meeting, a pre-summit meeting that was held in Baltimore County. I think our vice chair attended online as well, part of a planning meeting of all the Maryland police accountability boards. And so some things were learned there, such as the availability of some state resources and funding are available, to get a grant for additional staff and projects as well. I'm not sure if Chuck can elaborate on that, but it was a good sharing opportunity overall. So there might be other avenues as well, just to put a note there.
And I would like to hear from maybe the ad hoc group, we can, and we'll check with well, we could do that. Maybe Chuck could share that with the ad hoc group via email. Those points, and then we could stay within the open meetings act and ad hoc group to go over those points in our meeting, for, budget request and increase. We can do it like that.
Sure.
All right,
Which I'm going to.
to myself, Alicia and Ken and Mr. Richard.
The one that's just, okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
Yeah, okay, we'll be handling that in reference to budgeting and all, because that's a good reason to increase, because
Absolutely.
we're taking this to the next level. We need the public requests, that Mr. Endow made on behalf of the public and, which includes himself, I think is important. I also want to, before we make a motion to adjourn tonight, is I know we were looking at, the ratification of the final report scheduled for the 18th of December. In my mind, I'm thinking that that also means that that's when the next meeting is, the 18th. But I made mention earlier that the board did put in a policy that we all voted on and agreed to, that if we in time make the request known for a second meeting. So I was wondering how the 4th of December looked for us all, to kind of stay ahead of this. So by the 11th, everything is really done and is submitted on time for the 18th. December 4th, if it's inconvenient for travel, we're still doing it, hybridly, so that shouldn't be an issue. But I wanted to kind of put that on the floor now. Mr. Parliamentarian Vice Chair can clarify if we need to make it a motion, but I don't think we do, because we already agreed that that's how it would be done. We just need to make it known to the staff. But I want to kind of get everyone's, or at least the majority, if we can go with majority, but let's see, Vice Chair unmuting, so. Vice
No,
Chair.
I think it's we could just decide on the date. I would offer, if we're trying to meet as a board to review the report, decide on what elements it will include, sort of to finalize it. I think the 11th would work better for at least the data analytical portion of this report, than the 4th, but we could offer some preliminary information at that point.
And the only reason, thank you, Vice Chair, and the only reason why I mentioned the 4th was because at a starting point, it was like, let me put something out there and then get the response from everybody. And I agree, because your report is very thorough and it's very involved. And so we want that to be as completed as possible. So, the 11th works for me.
Chair, I believe you're unavailable on the 11th.
I am,
As administrative charge of committee.
yeah, yes, I am unavailable on the 11th. Soon as I said it, ding, 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 the bell went off. I am unavailable on the 11th because of the ACC. Now, let me ask Mr. Parliamentary, because of that being an important meeting, and I want to ask the administrative staff, if we hold it on the 11th, would it count against the missing chair as an absent, which is, because we have to be careful of those missing dates.
So
Yeah,
it would count as an absence for you,
Yeah.
at the committee level if you attended this meeting instead, or it would count as an absence for you if you attended the committee. I don't know if another member of CEX would be able to administer the meeting. Ms. Myers and I would not be available due to the committee meeting.
We could probably just change the day as well. It doesn't have to be, a Thursday necessarily, so long as everyone can agree.
Can we do that then? Let's see, let's look at if we can change the date. Alright, so instead of the 11th. Instead of the 11th. Can we do the 10th or the? I mean, it
How about
shouldn't
the
take long.
12th, since it's a Friday?
Or,
about the
or,
12th?
or that Friday, the 12th? That's the weekend, you see this, look over here. So I don't want anybody to miss and be counted as missing in action and it goes against us. So the week of the week of the 15th, excuse me, yeah, the week of the 8th through the 12th, what would be a good day? And Vice Chair, kind of leaning more toward you because you you got a heavy lift there. So
Yeah, I'm losing my battery. I might have to drop from this call, so I'll just say quickly, 10th, 11th, or 12th for me would work. So if you prefer 9th, also 9, 10, or 12, since Chair, you're not available on the 11th, 9 or 10th, Tuesday, Wednesday, those work well for me as well.
Okay, is the 12th good, Ken, I know, Chevette, but is the 12th good for everyone?
You have to do that, it's not perfect.
Okay, we have to, okay, I prefer. All right, we already got Vice Chair, we already have. Uh. Myself. Chuck.
Yes.
So do we need to meet the 4th and the 12th? Should we meet a
No, no,
couple
no,
of
no.
times? Just the 12th,
No,
okay.
just one
Just
of
the
those
12th.
times, decide what we're putting in, so we can send it out in enough time to the administrative staff. To finalize, do what I have to do, so we can have everything done by the deadline of the 18th, is what we're trying to obtain right now. So after I get it all from you, then I have to put it in the hands of the admin staff and ask for their availability on whatever day that we're deciding. I can't do 11th because I can't be absent from one or the other.
Is the 9th, 10th, or 12th?
I can do the 12th.
If we have to.
I am open also as needed. If we could meet a little earlier, I would be open to that, 6 o'clock. But I do understand that people have obligations at work.
And I was about to suggest a change of time as well.
Okay.
So, I'm not hearing from Chris or Ron. So let's say 12, let's change it to 1800 hours, excuse me, let's change it to 6 P.M.
That's good for me, Bishop. I'm flexible, most times after 5 p.m.
Copy that. Chris, I know you got the young ones, you have them up from school by that time,
Yeah, I can do that.
okay? So right now, we're saying the board is in agreement to the 12th of December, 6 P.M. Hybridly, whatever way you can come. Or is it easier just to say virtually, to keep it easy for everyone, virtual? Can we just make it virtual, please? If everybody agree with that way no one has to fight to get here. So let's just we're making a virtual meeting, for clarity, I wanna repeat this, I'm sorry. So we're making a virtual meeting for December 12th, virtual only. 6 P.M. The board is in agreement with that. I would now like to ask the staff if that's something they need to work on and get back to the 12th of December, 6 P.M. virtual only.
We can get that on the county's calendar timely. If we can, it looks like we'll be able to supply staffing if Laura doesn't otherwise work on Friday. I just expect a lot of hours to be taken up during the earlier part of that week, particularly with the ACC meeting, since she can only go up to 40. I currently expect to be unavailable at that time, but that doesn't prevent the board from functioning, so.
Copy that. Copy that, so we get notifications on that. Are there any final alibis? No last words, yes,
Just one comment, meeting on Friday the 12th, meeting shouldn't take no longer than 90 minutes.
I think we can do a little better than that.
60 minutes works.
Yeah, I think we do a little better than, I don't wanna, I love you guys, but.
To that, and to that end, while I think I likely won't be able to do present, what I can do and what I would strongly suggest is the chair and the vice chair and any ad hoc groups that wish to submit materials for the report, convey that to the chair and vice chair. So that way they can sit down with staff as soon as possible to generate the agenda, whittle it down to the things that you absolutely need to cover in that time. And even potentially, given the nature of the meeting and everyone's schedules, how much time you want to spend on each piece just for that specific meeting.
I agree.
So you can use it as efficiently as possible.
I agree, so every head up group, everything, we would send that up to myself and vice chair, share a little bit of, so we can kind of present it. So we can have an agenda, so, because I don't think we need any more than 60 minutes, that probably would be pushing it there. You know, that way we at least have that 60 minutes, if we need it, I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it, so. Okay?
So are we
Alright.
coming, Chair, are we coming with policy recommendations to this meeting or?
Come
Because
with
I'm
everything
assuming
that
that's
we-
part of our report or,
That is, yes, ma'am, that is exactly right, come with our policy, so everything that we want to put in this report, that's what we're coming with, that's what we're doing. All of that, yes, ma'am. Alright,
Did I miss the time to ask about the written complaints? Is that not being that asked later in the meeting?
okay, I missed that,
Did I miss it?
okay, I must have missed it too.
If I did, then,
No, ask the questions before we get it.
but, well, it's just that we used to get the narrative that the complainant would present. The reason why I'm asking is I think it gives a better picture of these things. Looking at the stats, you know, that's great, but sometimes I have questions. So, for an example, as I look at this one, the allocations described by bias or discrimination, a total of 42 complaints, and every one of them was either unfounded or exonerated. And I'm asking, how is that? I'm not looking to hunt police, but at the same time, I find it difficult to believe that everyone who filed a complaint in that particular category, you know, it just came up and said, and
So I think we had touched on it before.
because I think reading the complaint would at least give me a better sort of color commentating, if you will.
There are a number of ways that the written complaints can diverge from, for example, with what gets captured by video. I think bias discrimination is an interesting one, before I forget, where would be highly productive to read the line item rules for each department. And consider what sorts of things, what sort of facts would have to be true for a reasonable finder of fact to determine to a preponderance of the evidence that it happened. The way the rules are written can be pretty powerful, just as they are in criminal law. Regarding the complaints themselves, so in anything that we can glean through what is submitted through the board's existing systems, the program's existing systems, like the complaint form, that we can likely pull without it's just a question of having time to do it, because it's not the most
That's more of a status.
it's not the most efficient or savvy reliable system. for complaints that came in specifically through agency contacts. The program's first brush with those is in investigative files. So to get those, that would be something that like a committee member would have to raise either as part and parcel of written opinions or separate from written opinions. To determine if that's something that the AC can or will just send over, or in the alternative, asking the departments if they're willing to provide just as a matter of course, or creating recurring MPIA requests, particularly for like resolved cases. So that way, within this material here is you can use it exactly in any way that you need to or want to as part of your analysis, because it's been fully cleared and no one has any more confidential claims on it. Okay.
Right. All right, good stuff. All right, so, thank you for the question, thank you for the answer. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor to adjourn? Raise your hand, do your electronic thing. Any nays? The ayes have it. Good night.